This week on Phantom Power Hour. On more than one occasion, the lady said, hey, if you, they're not going to let you in, but like...
This is the foundation. This is what gives context to the kick drum, and it's what holds up and props up the guitars.
That is why I regretted getting rid of it, because it was so versatile. It was not a good time.
But when you're frustrated, you hide it so well. Like...
Doing that made me think back to the day when I was growing up, and I would like just spend the time in the car before I had like a phone or something, just like trying to calculate if we keep going this speed this whole time and we're this far away, because I would see like Indianapolis in 11 miles and be like, how long will it take to get there?
No, I did that too. I remember asking, how long, what if we go like a mile a minute?
Yep.
And how fast do you have to go to a mile a second? And my dad was like, too fast.
Too fast, too furious, too fast for y'all. The things that we used to do before we could just listen to whatever we wanted in the car or spend our time doing something else.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of that stopped once I got a Game Boy.
Were you a Game Boy Color?
Game Boy Color, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my cousin had an original Game Boy, and that's what got me hooked.
Those were huge.
They were giant.
I still have one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The case over here. I don't know if it works, but
if it doesn't, you should. Have you seen those like shadow boxes where they take them all apart to the components and then they have descriptions? Dude, they're cool.
Like you can just send it in and they'll do it, or
you can either do that or a bunch of people make their own and stuff too.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I was just looking at them yesterday because we're kind of redesigning the living room ever so slightly and putting more like gamer nerd stuff in there and putting a shelf with all our Funko Pops and everything.
That's awesome.
Looking at those little diorama type of deals.
I want to try to find a way. I need to like figure out how to make microphones part of the decor.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I've just gotten a stupid collection of microphones.
Well, if you want to butcher them, then you could make those little shadow boxes.
If I could find a way to make them look cool, but then still like pull them down and use them, that'd be ideal.
Do I need to get a 3D printer and then print you little people to hold them?
I have a 3D printer and I never use it.
Oh man.
I mean, it's old. It's an old boy.
Yeah.
But
have you made anything on it?
I used to have it just to like make random clips because I was real into weird miking. Like I want to put this one and this one together and align the capsules perfectly.
You made like the 90-degree angle clips for the 57, right? Or those ones that you got? I
bought that one. Okay. That was like a Grinelli mod for a 57, but I guess you can. I don't know if it'll be the same because you're like changing density in that curve, but I mean, I guess that's splitting hairs, but I don't know.
I don't know about using hairs for plastic molding and printing, but hey.
I mean, they come out like little hairs.
That's true. Little filaments. Filaments. Hey, everybody. Hey, Jeremy.
How's it going, man?
Going well. It's a Monday. I don't know if that's a peek behind the curtain for you guys or not, but today is Monday morning. Do you ever get a case of the Mondays anymore?
Not really, because it's like the weekends are crazy busy. Monday's almost like, oh, thank God we're back to our schedule.
Yeah.
I thrive on that. Like I drop the kids off, head to the gym, and then come finally go to work. I'm like, this is nice.
Yeah.
Of course, today's not like that, but anyway, no.
But usually, yeah. That's diving right into something that I was going to bring up a little bit later, but I was going to ask you, do you have any specific, I don't want to call them like morning rituals or routines, because I know that can change so much in this like self-employed type of industry, but if you have a busy day of session work ahead of you, is there anything that you do habitually?
For like a session, if I'm going to be here for a long period of time, especially if it's multiple day sessions, I definitely have like, I bring all the cups, like my coffee, a big thing of water, because it is super easy to stay busy and just forget to drink or anything. Bring some kind of food, because you never know if you're actually going to get a lunch break.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a fair amount of sessions that you were here for, and there's just no time.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
that
you saw the last couple. I brought in like Cliff Bar packs,
Yep.
Big Crunch bar packs, and the big old bag of seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just you kind of accidentally intermittent fast in this field. I feel like I'm sure there's some studios where it's like built in, or I mean, and geographically, Nashville. I mean, you have to take breaks if you're using union guys.
Yeah.
And certain amounts of time, and I mean, we don't do that around here.
I liked that though. If we were forced to take breaks, I feel like more often than not it would break the productivity, because usually around that time of day, say we start around here, we normally start 10 or 11. I think one time I started at 9 with you, but I think that was a special scenario.
Yeah.
But around that 1 to 2 to even like 2:30, 3 o'clock mark, that's where I feel like, all right, everything's all greased up. We're on a roll now. We've got all the sounds. We maybe made it through 1, sometimes 2 tunes by then, and things are feeling nice and fluid. And if all of a sudden, right at like 1 o'clock or something, you're like, all right, we're going to stop. We're going to be done now.
Yeah.
I think that would break productivity in that kind of creative pool that we've manifested over that time.
It kind of depends on the emotion that you want to foster in the room too, because I mean, most of the stuff we're doing here is like custom client work where Lord knows the genre of the song we're doing before we start it, right?
Right.
So I mean, and there's probably a fair amount of studios that know exactly what they're doing. Like they have a really fleshed out demo reel before they get it, where we're kind of like creating the whole thing as it happens. It kind of thrives in like a chaotic environment, I guess.
I wouldn't call it chaotic. Creatively free or
Yeah.
flexible.
Or like the funny part is when like everybody reels each other in, because everybody in that process that we normally keep around here is like very producer minded, knows how to regulate themselves and then how they perform with other people. So if somebody's getting hangry, like everybody knows, like
Right, which
like,
is why you want to have a snacks around.
yeah.
Because I mean, it's happened. It happened to me a couple days ago when we found out that the tweeter in my cab was busted.
Oh yeah.
And in retrospect, yes, that was frustrating. But I think the most frustrating part is I didn't realize I was getting hangry. I was working off of a smoothie from that morning.
Yeah.
And I brought snacks for everybody and never snacked
And you never
myself.
ate.
Yeah.
You kept asking everybody else if they wanted something.
I
too.
know. It's that caretaker in me, I suppose.
But that was an interesting thing too. I kind of want to ask you about.
Yeah.
So there's been a few times you've had issues with your gear. It's never caused any problems in any real like time management aspect. But now that we like actually stopped and wanted to figure this out, because we had added so many other variables.
Yeah.
We were like pulling things back, changing cables, pulling the pedals, change the amp.
Yeah. And because of the type of session we were doing, it kind of eliminated our usual go-to options if that had happened in another scenario.
Like we could have just defaulted to a DI.
Right.
In this case, we were trying to use very particular microphones, micing a cab. We didn't even have a DI to lean on. So the issues with that cab were very apparent.
But we didn't know it was a cab
No,
at first.
it was, I mean, why would you think that?
I never in 100 years would I have assumed that it was the cab. So what was happening? I was laying down a bass track and everything seemed fine. And at first, it kind of felt and sounded like a power issue.
Yeah.
So just overall signal dipping for sometimes a very short time, and then it would dip and stay down. And the first thought I had was the battery's dying in my bass, because I was using an active bass for that track. And the usual telltale signs are signal loss like that, and or a whine of some kind coming through. I didn't hear the whine, and I thought I replaced this battery just a couple weeks ago, but I've been playing a lot. So swapped it out. Things seemed fine. Started recording. Boom. Happens again. And then I think maybe it's a signal chain problem in the pedal board. So we tried so many different solutions, just pedal board minded, and the same thing kept happening where, okay, we think we found it, start recording, it happens again. To the point where I completely tore apart the pedal board. We bypassed the pedal board entirely. That's when we started to think that maybe it's a problem with the head.
Yep. And I moved the Kemper in, which was a powered Kemper, so it could still power his cab. But I'm like, I know the Kemper works. It may not be the flavor we're going for. Let's just see if this works. And it didn't. It didn't.
And I think it was you walking into the room with the cab while I was playing where you finally realized, I think it's the cab.
Yeah. Because I was like, maybe is it something rattling? I think I was like, I'm busting my head against a wall. But could it possibly be a snare? And that's the top end we're hearing, and it's just clicking on and off. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But as I walked in, I heard it happening in the cab. And then I asked you, like, where's the tweeter dial on this thing? And as soon as I killed the tweeter, like, I pulled the tweeter all the way up, and I could hear it farting out. So, I mean, everything now looking back makes complete sense that when you hit it hard, if there's a short in that cable or if it was overloading a voice coil or something, we haven't really diagnosed it. But with the problems of the tweeter and pulling the tweeter out of it, it was just, the cab sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it sounded great. And it didn't have the kind of bite that I was accustomed to, but ended up, I think, playing into our favor with the type of tone that I was using.
Oh, yeah.
It was a wild diagnosis thing.
But that kind of a thing feels so good when you finally figure it out. I don't know.
It does. It does. But to reel it back to just the hangry aspect of it, all of that was going on. We were under a time crunch as it was. And it's not like we had just, to finish this stuff this day and we'll be back the next day. It was like, we've got to get this whole thing done before this time today because people have hard outs. And I started feeling really guilty because I was like, of course it's my track that, like, I'm trying to get my part done and this starts to happen. And it is a lengthy process trying to figure out what's going on. And we have these restrictions. So any other solution that would be quick and easy, we can't go to. And in one of our previous episodes, I had brought up the fact that coming in here, I feel this higher responsibility to make sure my gear is in check because I want to be putting as much as I can on the table and providing to the rest of the crew because we're all in this, as a team. And you do the same thing when you come in, you run lines and all the other things. So all that was adding up. And then I was just hungry, I guess. And I was so full of frustration. It was silly. It was not a good time.
But when you're frustrated, you hide it so well. Like, he's still like, nothing's bothering him, whatever.
Yeah, well.
But, I want to go back to the tweeter thing. So,
it's called X now. Oh, tweeter, not, okay.
Hardly know her.
Hardly.
Oh, Big Daddy Elon. Anyway.
They just had another kid.
Did he?
Or they're going to have another kid.
Is it just a bunch of consonants slammed together?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if they've picked a name. I don't even know why I brought that up.
Tweeter.
Big Daddy Elon.
Big Daddy. So, when you're running your Elon live... this is going to get confusing. Let's call it what it is. We're too deep into this illustration. Bass cabs. I find these crazy interesting. Mine has a tweeter. And I run an Ampeg HLF 410, if you're curious. Killer cab. I have never once turned on that tweeter because I think I did once and I was like, nope, turned it off. From a bass player's perspective, because I'm looking at this from studio typically and what I think I want out of a bass sound. How do you view a tweeter? What does that do for you? Are there certain situations you would use it? Are there certain situations you wouldn't? Explain.
Totally. That's one of the reasons why I love that cab so much. So if I'm at home and I'm in a bedroom playing, 99% of the time, no tweeter. Because it's that same kind of thing where you have a completely dry DI sound, just bass straight in, and you hear every single little nuance in the worst kind of way. Sometimes I get that if I'm just in the room alone and I have the tweeter on. But in a recording scenario or in a live scenario, it depends on the kind of tone that I'm going for. But a lot of the time, I will have the tweeter even just a little bit on, because on that form factor cab that I had the other day, it's adjustable, right? You can adjust the level of it, and it really depends. When I'm playing live, I haven't been mic'd live in a very long time, so the tweeter level doesn't do anything for the engineer, for the front of house.
Yeah.
But for me on stage, it gives me just a little bit more to cut through, so I don't have to blast it as much to hear the articulation.
So in your case, are you taking a DI off of your board or a DI from the amp?
DI from the amp in a live scenario.
Okay.
And my amp has either pre-EQ or post. Most of the time, front of house wants post, because we don't, tour with a steady sound guy or anything. They don't know our sound. So to them, it's like, well, give me what you are comfortable with and I'll work with that instead. So in a live scenario, if I'm using distortion, if I'm playing something heavier, I'll boost that tweeter a little bit more to give me more of that cut and like really fast attack sound that I can hear.
Okay.
Without having, like I said, to blast everybody else with my cab. And depending on the venue size, it's even more helpful, because I can keep that lower volume without filling the room with, it sounds great when you're 2 feet in front of it, but once you get 10 feet away, it doesn't sound so good, and you don't want to be filling the room with that type of tone. And that's kind of how I use it the most. If I'm compressing my signal a lot and I'm doing slap or something that's picked, then that's when I also will boost the tweeter a little bit more to give me more of that percussive attack.
Okay.
If I'm doing something soulful, R&B, if I'm playing flat wounds or fretless, then tweeter completely off to get more of that mid-range warm tone.
So you're almost thinking about this more like a guitar player.
I think so. And I think that is what kind of spurred that initial thought, because I've always had a tweeter on my cab from when I started. And I never, when I first started playing out live, it was a Ashdown Mag 210. That was my first like professional cab, and it has an adjustable tweeter, but it's only off, some low setting, and then some high setting. To this day, I never took the time to understand exactly what's going on, but I could hear it. I would always just leave it off, because the only time I tested tone was sitting in my room playing, and I was like, oh, this is just harsh and brittle and gross, so I'll leave it off. But digging into just tone overall, a little bit of experience doing some like home mixing and things of that nature, and then being in here in various studios and kind of overhearing the conversations with guitar players about tone is what made me think about, oh, so I can use attack in a way to cut through the mix without being overbearing and providing too much mud while I'm doing it.
Yeah. Interesting. Because I can see a way to use it, but I guess I could explain why I'm leery to use tweeters. Because I think most bass players, and even myself, when I'm using a cab, when I'm doing it myself, which I don't like to do if I can help it. So there's so many other variables that could go into that attack thing. And even when we're talking about a dirty sound, like what we were getting that particular day, like any amount of grit or overdrive, which I feel like a lot of bass sound is that saturation. And like it's most of the time, if you're hearing a bass sound in a mix, it's dirtier than you think it is.
Oh man, I don't mean to interrupt, but that took me a while to learn.
Yeah, it's weird.
It is very strange, because if the track that we were mixing, or not mixing, the track that we were doing a couple days ago, if you were to just hear that bass track alone, you probably wouldn't like it.
I love it.
Well, because you understand, though. In my opinion, like 5 years ago, before I started down the path of understanding tone in that way a little bit more, I would hear something like that and just think, whoa, there needs to be 70% less saturation, distortion, overdrive, whatever the case may be.
I get to put, like, it goes right back to, like, you're thinking about this like a guitar player. So you're doing so much of the heavy lifting of the mix. And saturation is one of those things that's either perceived higher in the EQ spectrum or it just exists higher in the EQ spectrum. Because any amount of saturation that I'm going to add to a bass instrument, I'm going to try to keep that low end, like, clean. And you have a few pedals that do that anyway.
Yes.
That'll kind of split the signal and you get a clean low end and you can saturate the mid range and top end to whatever you want. Which helps marry to the guitars. Like most of a guitar sound, I think we were even standing there. And you guys were like, those guitars sound huge. It's like, most of it's the bass. I muted the bass and like the guitars sounded weak and puny. But it's if you can get them to work together, and there's no way to do that if the bass is purely clean in that genre of music.
Right. And even, I don't know, even in think of your most clean indie rock or bedroom pop or something, there's usually still a little bit of gravel to that bass tone.
Yeah.
Maybe it's post-recording and you're doing it in the box or something, but I don't, and maybe that's just my own ear. I just like it now. And before, complete opposite. When I first started playing, I was that purist that straight into the amp, no pedals of any kind, unless it's a tuner, and then keep all the knobs at 12 o'clock. Tone is in the fingers, tone is in your bass, tone is in your strings.
I think you can learn a lot that way, but it's because there is a fair amount like that I can't fix, like compression on a bass. You can only do so much, but if you're not consistent, like plucking the strings the same way, or if you're using a pick and doing it very consistently, even before compression, there's not a lot I can do. And I feel like it's the hardest thing to get right and the least appreciated piece of the recording because everybody's excited to get to guitars. And like I normally work drums, bass, guitars, vocals, and keys wherever that fits. Yeah. But most people just want to blow right past the bass and get to guitars like it's an afterthought. Like, no, this is the foundation. This is what gives context to the kick drum, and it's what holds up and props up the guitars. Like, I don't know. It's definitely looked past quickly, I think.
Yeah, and it's a shame, man. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think a lot of people feel as though it's the more boring aspect of it.
Yeah.
But
well, sometimes it's the less talented individual playing the bass.
Yeah,
sometimes
for sure. But if you are, I don't know. I think I'm just going to end up restating exactly what you said, but it's the whole foundation of it. You know, you're laying the cinder blocks down for everything else to be built upon. And if you try to blow past that or say you'll come back to it later, that's my least favorite thing to do. If the bass track's not done, I don't want to add anything else to it.
Yeah.
One caveat is if I don't know what the guitar parts are yet, then okay, do your guitar parts and then I'll come back and finalize bass, because there are aspects of picking a line that they're doing and harmonizing with it or something of that nature.
Like in context of a custom client session and we're doing band riffs and you want to make sure it's absolutely locked. Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure.
Aside from something like that, what you're saying is so true with the way the kick sounds and the way you feel the song. If you don't have that bass aligned with it, I don't know, man. It changes the feel entirely.
Oh yeah. I like to spend time on bass because the worst mix note I can get from anybody is, hey, can we change the bass? Changes literally everything in the mix. So if I don't have that right, like I'm going to be working way too hard. So like, let's make sure we get this right. I can adjust guitars. I can adjust keys. That's okay. But if I'm messing with bass, I'm also messing with kick and snare and guitars and all, like everything. And it's a pain.
And is a lot of that because of how wide the spectrum, like the frequency spectrum is for the bass that you're trying to utilize in the mix itself?
I think it's like in, I guess, modern music, particularly for whatever that means.
Yeah.
Because we could talk pop, rock, metal, even like country. The bass takes up so much room in that, while at the same time like filling so many gaps.
Yeah.
As kicks, I mean, I'm going to be pulling numbers kind of out of nowhere, but these are generally where things tend to sit for me, like kick around 60 hertz, snare 120 hertz. Guitars are going to start to die out around 150, 100 hertz. And then there's like more dips as the further up the mix you go. But the bass is the one instrument that's expected to sit in all of those places, in all of those holes. Like even up to like 500 to 1K, or even sometimes 2 and 3K. And then we can get into why I don't like tweeters on cabs.
Yeah.
We can wrap all the way back around.
Right.
But it's the tone has to be good, and it still has to stand up even with all those limitations. So like when we were listening and kind of fixing the tone, I was moving things around and adjusting things because we already knew the fundamental of the kick. I had an idea of where the guitars were going to go, but having that in your head and what you want to achieve, like we wanted a big thing because it was, you're doing a lot of moving with the guitars in this aspect.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say like this, a fairly metal bass tone. It's not like metal. It's not like periphery, snolly, crazy, dirty stuff, but I mean, it was a big, hefty, modern bass tone.
Yeah. Very, very dirty and overdriven. And that's, so I used, I stacked overdrives, but I didn't use a distortion. So we got more soft clipping, but stacked together instead of using like one really hard clip, which in my mind is that differentiation between like a modern metal tone versus something that's not that, I suppose.
Say that again?
So using an overdrive to get a softer clip,
Okay.
as opposed to using a distortion to do a really hard clip across the spectrum,
Okay.
is kind of what my mind jumps to when differentiating between a modern metal tone for bass versus something that's not exactly that.
Okay, that makes sense. And I feel like with bass, even now, there's so many tools. Like dark glasses.
Oh man,
Speaking of, I want Nolly's new pedal that just came out.
I haven't seen his new pedal.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard him talk about it.
Okay. Have you tried the Neural DSP
Parallax?
dark glass?
Oh,
they have
no.
a full dark, dude.
No.
You got to get it. It's the whole dark glass line for bass. It's their bass specific Neural DSP.
I have Parallax from them, which I use all the time. That is so good, and especially if you can switch out the IRs on the bass cab.
Yeah.
But it's such a handy tool to have that compression on the low end, and then you can make dirty anywhere else in the spectrum. It's such a cool tool. If you don't have Parallax, I mean, it goes without saying, this is not sponsored, but
Right.
if I've used one thing for bass more than anything, it's Parallax and what is it? Submission Audio's Double Tap,
Oh yeah.
which is a super cheap, at least it was, I haven't looked at it in a long time, a really cheap compressor for bass, or you can specifically compress the low end and then compress the entirety of the signal. And it just kind of gives you that like low end thunderous, very controlled bass sound. It's nice.
So do you, the way that Parallax works makes me think of, if you don't have that, or if it hadn't existed yet, how much of like doubling the bass track or splitting it and doing like a high pass, low pass, do you do that all the time?
All the time. Yeah. Parallax and Saturn kind of does that too.
Yeah.
Like Saturn 2, I've actually used it. I was doing broadcast for mega church that I work at, and I was using Saturn 2 and got that tone really dirty. It's kind of hard to hear that context, but that bass is destroyed. And Saturn was perfect for it because it has the dynamic control on that low end, like so everything below 100 hertz, pristine on that, and it's super clean and crazy compressed. So it's just a constant low end.
Yeah.
I didn't have a rhythm guitar to work with, so I had to make that bass dirty. So like anything where you're thinking, oh, this is thick, it's all the bass, and he's kind of doing two jobs at once, and that's having some good distortion helps.
When we were talking about my tone for the session and the tweeters, you had mentioned that I think about it kind of like a guitar player would, and I wanted to bring up kind of my pedal board layout for that sound because I hadn't really thought about it this way until I heard another person talking about it. So if you're a bass player or you dabble on bass and you want to try to get some different tones, I use a lot of guitar specific pedals. Not all of my pedals are bass specific pedals, and the main difference is bass pedals normally have some kind of low pass built in so that you're going to affect the higher bands like a normal pedal would, if we're talking overdrive or distortion, but then it'll also let the low end come through as well. So if you think a classic tube screamer, you get the mid hump, but you also get a low cut pretty heavily.
Yeah.
And if you're playing bass, that's going to suck all the heft out of your tone. So I use a tube screamer on my board, and I use a clon type pedal, both of which have low cuts. But I also will use, and I can imagine getting hate for this, but I use a sonic stomp at the end of my chain.
Interesting.
And the sonic stomp, I feel like if you peruse the forums, you're going to come across two different camps that either love them or hate them. I think it gets a lot of hate because they're really affordable, and I love it. I turn the bass bias up just a little bit past noon, and it kind of brings a little bit of life back to the low end. But because I had cut in two different stages, I had low cuts, the low end that it brings back isn't that like 30, 40 hertz. That's just like mud and grossness. I don't know. It works for me. Might not work for everybody.
So is it like compressing the low end, or is it synthesizing a low end?
You know, I don't know exactly what the sonic stomp does.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
If it's something like R bass or max bass, where they're kind of synthesizing a low end, which would be useful in that context.
I have tried to figure out exactly what's happening, and I have failed to understand exactly what's happening. The best thing that I kind of associated it with in my mind was just like an expander type of plugin.
Okay. So does the low end feel really saturated when you bring it back?
It feels more like a max bass. Like it feels very just boomy.
Okay.
And thick.
Maybe there's a little bit of synthesization.
I don't know. If
Did
you
I
know
just
what,
have a stroke? What just happened?
if you know what Sonic Stomp does other than cause strokes, let me know, because I genuinely I want to understand what's going on, because I love that pedal. And there's a like a low bias and a high bias, and the high feels like it does add a little saturation, and it seems as though the band changes as you turn it up, as well as the level. I could be totally off base. This is just what my ears are hearing, the way I've used it.
Is there, for bass, is there some kind of pedal that, I guess it's like its own little effects loop, like say before your distortions and your overdrives? If you could put this, whatever this theoretical box is, have your effects loop where you're maybe going into your distortions, all that stuff, feed it back, and then you have basically like a wet dry, or maybe not even a wet dry, but I want my dry below 100 hertz and I want my wet above 100 hertz. Does anything like that exist?
I bet there is something like that. My mind immediately goes to like a splitter of some kind.
Yeah, but like a frequency dependent splitter, I guess, is what.
Well, you would put like an EQ pedal in there or something, or two EQ pedals, I guess. That's what my mind goes to, and that's the same way that I would kind of build that in the DAW as well. I mean, that Grace, what's that called? The Roxy?
Yeah.
I bet you could kind of do that. I don't know. I haven't played with the loop feature very much yet, so I don't know if it's pre-EQ or post-EQ. But if it's pre-EQ, because it does have a wet-dry mix, but that's for the whole output chain.
Yes, but if you also use it in conjunction with the EQ, and I'd have to look at a schematic to see where that's placed. If it's placed before, then that could be really interesting. And then use the wet dry, and you have basically what we're talking about. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah. But you could do that probably if you wanted to have a 4 cable method on your pedal board for bass. You could probably use the send return in your amp to do something similar. But instead of, as guitar players would normally use that for modulation and reverb effects, instead use it for your overdrive or saturation effects with, but then again, you don't have the wet dry mix unless your amp specifically has something like that built in.
Interesting.
Now my wheels are turning, Jeremy.
Well, and I'm curious too to see because all the things that you talk about liking on a bass and that you want out of it, I'd be curious. Do you just want to just break down and buy like a Nolly signature bass?
Yes, of course.
They're not that expensive.
Of course I do.
In the world of basses.
In the world of basses. Oh man, yeah. I have dropped some coin on some basses, but I've never regretted it. That's the thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, because you had a Modulus. Do you still have it?
Yeah, I have. There's only one bass that I've ever sold, and that's my one regret with.
What was it?
It was a G&L. It was an L2000, and the reason I sold it is because I didn't understand it at the time. It was pretty early in my playing. I'd been playing for maybe 5 years or so, and It was during that phase of disliking the Fender tone. And I know G&L's not Fender, so don't jump at me.
I want to talk about this, but go on.
Okay.
Go on.
We'll put a pin in it. So the L2000 has that same type of woody, full. It's not really a P sound. It's not really a J sound, but you can adjust it to get closer to either of those sounds if you want to. The reason I didn't like it is because you'd brought up Modulus. That was my first kind of pro level bass, and before that I started with an Ibanez sound gear. So both very modern, tight, and crisp basses. The G&L wasn't that, and I thought because it wasn't that, it wasn't good. I didn't understand at the time that all of these are paintbrushes with different jobs. I thought you get one paintbrush to do all the jobs, and the feel of playing it, or how many strings or the type of strings you put on it, are what are the reason why you have different basses. I was ignorant to the how it fits in the mix and why you would want a different kind of fundamental tone from the instrument. So I sold it, and I regret it because it's a very cool bass. It has 3 pots. I believe it's volume for the pickups, and then tone. But then,
did it have the offset Z style pickups?
No, the ones that I had, they were too. I think they were. I might be wrong about this, but I think that they were humbuckers with coil splits, because there were also switches on them.
Yep.
That you could, from what I believe I remember, you could do the coil split in them.
That was like his mad scientist work, where you could, I think, was it a 3-way switch on each one of those?
Yep.
So, okay, you could either do it in parallel on the bottom if it was all the way down, or right in the middle you were having like a single coil variant, and then up top would have been like a humbucker wiring.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the last things he worked on, was that wiring. Unless I'm totally off base, but that sounds like
whatever magic those switches did. That sounds right based on what I remember. But that is why I regretted getting rid of it, because it was so versatile, but every type of versatility was a different type of that warm body tone that I thought wasn't good because it wasn't tight and crisp. But that's why I got rid of it.
Interesting.
Yeah. But you mentioned the Nolly bass and kind of high-end instrumentation. So my gear right now...
I'm curious. I'm going to look this up while you're talking.
Do it. I've got... I still have everything else. So everything I mentioned so far, I still have the Ibanez sound gear. I don't play it, but I keep it because it's stained in my own blood from when I learned how to slap. So I don't know, it's pretty gnarly and I like it. Then I got a Modulus Flea J5. which is just awesome. If you aren't familiar with the Modulus stuff, they have carbon graphite necks, which make them very tight and punchy, but also you lose some of that body midtone. So some people feel like it's too sterile of a sound, which is, it's true. I use that for certain situations. But I also have a Modulus Quantum 6 fretless that I honestly just got for the fun of it. I wanted a fretless, but I also
For the fun of it.
I also wanted extended range. Same deal, carbon graphite neck, so it gets the mwah, but it doesn't sound like a Jocko bass unless you heavily mess with the EQ on like post. Then after working with all those basses, I got hooked up with Marco. So I have a handful of Marco basses, mostly from his TFL line. I have a 4-string and then a 5, both of which are TFL, which is just an active J-style type of bass. Glockenklang preamp in the 5, the 4 is passive. Marco winds his own pickups and all those. And I have a 5-string single cut that is tuned E to C that I use for jazz stuff. Also a Glockenklang preamp, so very clear, clean sound. And I feel like I'm forgetting some other ones, but the one that you've probably seen most on Jeremy's channel, at least lately, is the Yamaha NE5, I think is the model number, but it's the Nathan East signature model that I purely got for the aesthetic. It's the only reason I bought it. The only time I've ever bought something only because of how it looked. But it's all white and it feels awesome. White
Was
and
that
gold.
the one? Was that the one you sent me a picture and the tuning knob broke off?
Yeah, yeah. For whatever reason, it comes stock with like plastic tuning knobs, and I got it used from a guy that I teach with, and he had already replaced one of them. So that should have been my sign.
So it's a thing.
It's a thing, yeah. But I was at a gig, and the B string, as I was tuning, it was really hot out, and I think that's why this happened. But that plastic tuning peg just like was just like warm enough to be malleable enough to just like slip over the post it was on and just cracked and then just shattered in my hand. So I was like, well, I hope my B string stays in tune all night. And it did. So kudos to Yamaha for making a bass that stays in tune.
Wow.
Yeah.
So apparently the price on Nolly basses has gone up quite a bit.
That's okay. When we wrap this up, you can cut out one of my kidneys or something.
Done.
And if you're looking to buy a kidney, one of my kidneys, let us know.
Sponsored by Josh's Kidney.
Kidney's the one you can live with just one, right?
Sure.
Okay. I think the liver can grow itself back and you can survive with one kidney. So if you want a liver or a kidney, let me know.
The liver can grow itself back?
I think so. Yeah, I think you can like get rid of up to half of your liver and it'll grow back.
The more you know.
Well, now I have to fact check myself. I don't want people, the fine folks of YouTube.
This is definitely medical advice.
Oh, nope. But Jeremy, I can't be responsible for the fine folks that listen and watch Phantom Power Hour to think that they can just regrow their liver because I said so.
I don't know. I mean, I think they would expect listening to musicians that we know about the liver.
All right. Well, Google happens to say the liver has a unique capacity among organs to regenerate itself after damage. A liver can Did I just have a stroke? A liver can regrow to a normal size even after up to 90% of it being removed. So we can take out 90% of your liver.
Who needs it?
Well, I think everyone needs one. But trying to make a quick buck, sell 90% of your liver.
Yeah. I'll go with moral of the story.
Moral of the story. I don't know. Maybe donate plasma, though. People need that, and you can get a little bit of money.
That's how we put a down payment on our house.
There you go.
I have the scar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll stick with you forever.
Yeah.
Not a fun time.
It's not. Well, I mean, it's not the worst time. Unless you're like really afraid of needles. But did they stick you wrong though?
Oh, many times.
Okay.
Yeah, many times.
I thankfully never had that problem, but in college, I feel like if you've donated plasma, it's most likely while you've been in college, because that's just the thing to do.
Yeah.
But my roommate at the time, she went in one time and her whole arm just like turned black. Just, I don't know. I think she said they hit a nerve or something in there. And so they missed the vein. They poked something they weren't supposed to. And her whole arm just like bruised up entirely.
Oh.
And then she tried again like a year later after getting over that trauma. And she's like, I'm going to try again. Same thing happened. So I think she's done for good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a good time, especially when you get the saline back and it's like freezing cold.
Yeah, that's a weird feeling.
That's something I haven't thought about in a long time.
It's kind of fun though to watch the little machine like separate the plasma
you're like
from your
watching blood go into a robot.
I don't know, man. It's kind of mesmerizing. I like robots, and I don't know. I haven't done it in a long time though. Maybe I need to go back.
That was how
Help
I
some people.
bought a lot of my initial gear.
Me too.
Plasma.
Yeah.
That's a lot of coin back then.
Well, so the place that I used to, we might have gone to the same place. Did you do it when you were in college as well?
No, I didn't do it in college at all. I did it when I moved here.
Okay. So definitely not the same place then. But when I was going, you get a bonus for it being your first time.
Yep.
And then if you go, I think you're not allowed more than 2 or 3 times per week, because then it becomes dangerous to your well-being. But if you max out the amount of time you can go per the month, then you'll get another like $100 bonus at the end of it.
Oh yeah. I would go twice a week. The hardest thing was to like make sure you drink enough water.
Yeah.
Because you got to pound water.
Yeah. It's all getting sucked out of you. You're also supposed to eat before you do it. But my kind of schedule for whenever I was able to go was wake up at like 5, go to the gym, go donate plasma, then go to work.
Oh.
And so it would be post gym before I had food, and I would go in there and I would be feeling great. And at this time I was ending my gym sessions with like meditation in the sauna. So I'd be super calm going in there. And the first thing they have to do every time is check your like just heartbeat,
your pulse.
Yeah, check all the normal stuff. And on more than one occasion, the lady said, hey, if you they're not gonna let you in, but like stand up real quick and just cough or something. And then I would do that. To
raise your blood pressure?
Yep, because my blood pressure was very low and my heart rate was very low because I had just expended all my energy and then like got very just zenned out in the sauna. And so my heart rate would be like 42.
Wow.
And she's like, we can't let you in. So I'd stand up and cough, and then she'd let me in.
That's wild.
Yeah. Don't know how we got here, but you don't like tweeters on base cabs. Tell me why.
Yeah. Well, no, this is now Phantom Plasma Hour.
I'm going to have to make a graphic for that one.
So last thing, back to why I don't like tweeters on cabs.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because I feel like they're used incorrectly. I'm all about that top end boost, but with all these other things that we've talked about, overdrives, distortions, there's like a fair amount of fizz there.
Yeah.
And that's like useless, especially on bass above like 5 to 8K, depending on the instrument, depending on what you want out of it. But like especially anything above 10K, useless to be there. And unless you're cutting that before boosting your tweeter, I feel like you're just getting all the junk, like in all the weird nasties, which I'm still a fan of boosting that stuff. But if you can find a way to like cut it before boosting it with a tweeter, then you get like the cool stuff out of the tweeter rather than like the plasticky. Because there's not like, and some people will fight me on this, but like I don't think there's much air to be had on a bass instrument. It's mostly just like the little micro noises you're gonna get from the hand on the strings or something.
Yeah. And I think if you're doing solo bass stuff, which is super uncommon.
Yeah, totally different context.
Yeah. But I'm with you though. If you're tracking a traditional type of rock,
Yes.
metal, country track.
I should say I'm coming at it from that angle.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, that's a totally different use case. That's very handy in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But yeah, and that's all the more reason to, even if you're a player, take the time to understand carving tone. Take the time to understand how your specific playing with your specific gear is affected by EQ and how you can manipulate that. It's there for a reason, and that reason, bass players, is not to turn the bass knob all the way up and the treble knob all the way down. I know you're watching.
Oh.
Don't do that, okay? Don't do it because I said so. Just don't do it because it's not good.
It doesn't help anybody.
No.
You think you're helping. You're not helping.
No. You'll feel the bass just fine without turning it all the way up.
I feel like the biggest thing I'm mostly saying to people is, are you rolling off all the treble? Yeah. Give it back.
Give it back. Oh, man. That is no fun to work with. Like...
No, because it's just...
Well, okay, and here's I don't want to say counter argument, because I'm all on board with what you're saying about the tweeter. But one thing that could be said is it not better to take things away post as opposed to try to bring things back in post? So if you have all the fizz, in 8 to 10K area, wouldn't it be better to work on pulling that back as opposed to try to bring brightness in like the 1 to 2.5K range?
Yes, but essentially you're doing the same thing at the cab level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, where do you want to do it? Do you want to have more control over it? Or, I mean, there may be some benefit to doing it there if you can also cut, but I think we're in the weeds. There's so many variables.
And like that, we need to cut it. So, Jeremy, that was a song reference, by the way.
Oh, I missed it.
It's in the hip hop realm.
Yeah, that's not my world.
Yeah. Or if we do cut it out.
Full House, baby.
Boom. Yeah. So, what have you been listening to? Do you got any recommendations for us?
I do.
Ooh.
I came prepared.
Prepared.
So, I
Prepaid?
Prepaid. No, he didn't pay me. This dude I found him on an Instagram short, and I had to track him down. So his marketing thing is totally working. Clayton King. I think he only has one song out.
Okay.
It's crazy heavy, like very... I'll play a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But hang on, he's like guitar solos.
Oh, man.
It's cool.
That's so
I
cool.
saw him on an Instagram short, and I was like, this kid's doing it right.
Yeah.
And he only has
awesome.
one song that I can find, but, I mean, what's his monthly listenership? It was like something stupid. I can't even see it here. But the streams that I did see on YouTube were like, wow, he knows how to attack the market. Like, so... If for nothing else, even if you don't like the music, go see what this kid is doing with like shorts and Instagram reels and like.
What was his name?
Clayton King.
Clayton King.
Let me make sure.
That's a good name too.
Clayton King. The song is Equivalent Exchange.
It's all right. I'll throw it up there. That's cool album art too.
What's yours?
See, I'm a little bit less prepared. I have like a whole list of people, but I'm gonna go with Brother Oh Brother today. Brother
Does that
Oh Brother.
sound familiar?
So that is Chris Banta's project. Chris Banta is also the guy behind Romanus, the label, and Romanus, the vinyl kind of manufacturer. He's based in Indianapolis, but Brother Oh Brother is a duo that is heavy garage rock metal, psychedelic but bluesy, but also yells and screams. I don't know what category to put it in. It deserves its own category, but it's
like a musical all-you-can-eat buffet.
In the best kind of way. In the most like it's like Golden Corral for the day that you wake up and you know that you want to fill yourself, and you know that you probably shouldn't, but you want all the options and you want to enjoy every last bit of it. You want them to make the steak the way you want it, but you also want your steak to be from a buffet.
I've never experienced this.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, I don't know what that's like either. But yeah, my rec this week is Brother Oh Brother. Their newest album, Skinwalker, is pretty righteous.
My. That's very garage.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, Brother Oh Brother, Skinwalker. Check it out. It's a good time. Check out Romanus if you haven't. They have some very cool vinyls. They just released a maggot-filled vinyl, meaning inside of the vinyl are maggots.
Ugh.
Yeah. Tasty.
All right.
Well, Jeremy, thanks for sitting down with me yet again.
Yeah. Love it.
Love it. If you loved it, let us know. Tell us in the comments. Maybe hit the like button a little bit.
And by the way, tweeter or no tweeter, where do you stand?
Where do you stand? Or sit. How do you feel about the tweeters?
And if you made it this far, put a loaf of bread in the comments.
Ooh,
Why?
bread loaf.
Because toast sounds really good.
Toast is good. Avocado? No avocado?
Oh, yeah. A little bit of egg, a little bit of avocado.
Egg, avocado.
I'm basic. It's fine.
Sometimes basic is the best, though.
Yeah, I got a pumpkin spice latte today. I'm not proud.
But did you enjoy it? That's the question.
I did.
See, that's all that matters, Jeremy. Don't care about what others say.
I haven't gotten one in years.
You be you. You live your best life.
It's fall.
You live your best life. And 9 out of 10 dentists recommend subscribing to Phantom Power Hour to ensure that you live your best life.
And we're still trying to track down the 10th.
Can't find him. But until next time, later.